So first things first, why drop to 2? Why start this new game? And isn't that going to be confusing for people that, they go into the store and they're like, I'm going to buy Lords of the Fallen, and obviously
Correct.
there's 2 games.
Well, it is a challenging, difficult game. I guess this is one of the challenges.
To buy it.
Yes, of course. But in all honesty, yes, we set out to make Lords of the Fallen 2. I mean, that was the mandate. That was why we were hired. That's why we jumped in the CI game ship. So the studio was created to handle this game. We were making Lords of the Fallen 2. But there was a massive gap between the release of the 2 games. And when we were putting the bones of this title, we were looking 3 or 4 years into the future. What are the creative decisions that we're going to take in order for us to have a fighting chance? So what happened is that after sifting through all the feedbacks, and we knew that this is an established franchise and it has 8 million users, it reviewed decently, and it had a bit of a legacy. We were keen to wrap the story and have the players see the results of Harkin and his exploits in Keystone Monastery. But we put it far into the future, because one of the first questions on surveys was, would you buy Lords of the Fallen 2? And a lot of folks said, do I need to play the first one? I'm not exactly sure. I'm not ready to dive head in a sequel, especially since it's that far apart. That was one of the reasons. It's like the death of 1,000 cuts. The second reason is that we innovated enough to change all the paradigms. And I do mean all the paradigms. We inherit absolutely all the mechanics and the way the game what type of game it is, and the story and the mythos. We expanded it tenfold, and we changed a lot about it. And I do mean a lot. And it felt wrong to call it Lords of the Fallen 2, because it was different. It's a completely different game. Yes, the threads leads to the exploits of Harkin, but it is a completely different game. So then it became the Lords of the Fallen, because it was a reboot. It was a reboot, and a sequel at the same time, but mostly a reboot. And then a feedback came that it was confusing, and we decided to drop the and just call it Lords of the Fallen. And it sounds a bit meandering now that you step outside after all these years and look at it, but this could only be Lords of the Fallen. It's not like we are pushing aside the 2014 title. That is not the case. We are incredibly reverent and we made good work on it. But this is a reboot, therefore Lords of the Fallen.
So players who played the original and they're now going to play this one, is this a reboot of sorts? What are they going to be able to bring forward from the first experience, or is it completely fresh?
No, we took everything. We took the mechanics, the story, the lore, the characters, some characters, important characters, that they or may not make an appearance here 1,000 years later. That is a bit absurd to think about it, but they will find threads and they will see the consequences of Harkin's actions. Another reason why it's not Lords of the Fallen 2 is that we move the narrative away from Harkin. He's no longer the vehicle. The characters, the players create their own avatar, their own sort of hero, and these are all characters that come to Mornstead and be resurrected and so on. So as I mentioned, we changed way too many paradigms for this to be a sequel.
So what are the core pillars of this new game? What are you shooting for in terms of foundations?
So firstly, addressing the feedback from the previous game, or as we set out, because we built it from scratch. We wanted to be at the forefront of technology, therefore we could not creating in the CryEngine like the previous one was, nor work on Unreal 4. We started work on Unreal 4, but we were looking to Unreal 5 because we wanted to incorporate all the new technology and be in tune and be sort of the first AAA that takes Unreal, that takes the engine by the horns. So modernizing it's a key word that we had on that fateful PowerPoint presentation. But what does modernizing mean? It means the first game was a product of their time, and this new game, it has to be competitive in the new market. It means making the game more realistic, more immersive, more grounded. Because what is the realism in a fantasy game? You look at your Game of Thrones versus some other, versus your World of Warcraft, let's say. Game of Thrones is dark fantasy. It's much more grounded. You see the misery of the world and how the supernatural twists them, and how everything is weaved with negative emotion, how the world itself is on the brink, and it's the people, their mental is just frayed. So armed with this knowledge, we just made it a dark fantasy. Now it's strongly anchored in medievalry, from the sword techniques to the world itself. We took inspiration from actual landmarks and actual places in real world, because when you establish the foundation, then if you see anything out of the ordinary and weird, it's easier to be intrigued and be immersed, because the foundation is real. So that's how we plan to modernize it. And obviously the biggest effort was on gameplay, to make it fast, responsive, and more than everything, fluid. And not necessarily fast in terms of how fast the character moves. Yes, the character moves faster, a bit faster than the previous game, but that doesn't give you the feeling of actual speed and alacrity. But how fluent combat is, how you can translate from a heavy to a light attack seamlessly, you change stances in between attacks, how you can you come out of the animations just a bit faster, the recoveries are just a bit faster, you're healing it much quicker now, you can parry while moving, you can still play the fantasy of the big burly warrior with the tanky armor, the marauder, sort of with the army, with a weapon as big as the sofa, but we give you more options in terms of play styles. You play the rogues, you play the rangers, and everything else in between.
What has the Unreal Engine 5 allowed you to do that perhaps you couldn't do before?
So firstly, it goes without saying, it allowed us more bandwidth in terms of technology. Initially, when we started in the Umbral world, a parallel world and everything, it felt like a very daunting task. And the limitation of the Unreal 4, in terms of streaming and characters and everything, was keenly felt. Now, looking forward to Unreal Engine 5, we were 100% anxious to see how would they improve on that technology to allow us to load more things in, to have more control on the resources allocated to each job family. But more than this, the improvements in technology of Unreal, such as Lumen, was incredibly important. It was a shift of paradigms that we were not. It took us a bit to understand it, because we no longer make light in the way they do, but now it's more dynamic and it's a bit more work, but at the same time the results are on hand. You can test, you can now highlight the golden path, you can obfuscate elements. It's absolutely fantastic. A nanite for the definition and detail of the environment, it looks absolutely beautiful. It looks like a picture. A lot of chaos in terms of all the physics, all the ribbons, everything that hangs and dangles, improvements on the animation pipeline. But so this was a game changer for sure. But the most important aspect is the mental sanity and the confidence that we are on the forefront of the technology race, and we can adopt whatever comes in.
So with the two worlds, are they layered on top of each other? Like, are you having to build exactly two worlds on top of each other that you see through different lenses?
Yes, sir, that is correct. So the way we went about to do this, and this was a production hurdle and a nightmare that was unfolded slowly, because initially they said, we're not building two games at the same time. No, of course not. But we opened the Pandora's box. Soon everything was Umbral. People early on from the playtests understood, like, that is something. You guys are on to something, and that gave us enough rope to hang ourselves with. But all jokes aside, we realized we had a winner. So initially, when we were run on older tech, to change everything seamlessly, because we load all the Umbral NPCs, all the systems, all the mechanics, all the interactables, they're effectively there, but you don't see them. There are umbral enemies that look at you and they react to you. You raise your lamp, the zombies will see you and they're going to try to hit you. There are 2 games. Initially, you had to go through a loading time, so you had to respawn you at the previous area, and now in Umbral you have to escape, but that did not fulfill the fantasy of you playing the era. You trying to play through the game over screen, trying to crawl your way back. So with Unreal Engine 5, we're able to better allocate these resources and be able to load all these things, and we still have tweaks to do, but we're quite happy how things are turning out.
So obviously the next gen consoles are super powerful and the PCs you can push as far as you want, but in that mix you've also got the Xbox Series S.
Yes, sir.
There's been a few companies recently that have struggled with it, like Baldur's Gate, the Larian devs, and that's not launching on Xbox just yet because of the Series S issues. Have you had any such issues with the Series S?
So unfortunately, I don't know much of their struggles. Yes, each console is a new house, with a new layout, with fans and detractors, and we are making strides to be everything on the same level, and we have achieved that with the help of Epic. Epic has been incredibly accommodating, have been a great support for us, an invaluable help to help us understand where they are, where they're going, because when we were working this game, we were looking forward to features and things that were not quite ready yet, not finished, present but not finished. So we are in a comfortable place technology-wise, but we are still tweaking because,
What lessons did you learn from the first game then to take into this game?
So I myself, I was not involved. I was a fan of the game, but I myself, I was not involved.
Okay, it's a different perspective then. You're going as a fan into this game. What did you want to see in this game that perhaps wasn't done in the original?
So me moving in, clearly this all kicked out based on a PowerPoint that I wrote in a dingy hotel on a laptop. The lessons, because the industry evolved, as I mentioned, the first game was pretty much a product of that time. I wanted more immersion, and whatever project I would work from now on, I will stick to this tenet. Immersion is achieved is such an elusive, ethereal, esoteric word, but in order to ground the experience and make it very compelling, it doesn't matter the art style, doesn't matter the definition, but create a compelling environment that tells a story without voicing it, environmental storytelling, showing, don't tell, and all these things. I learned that it's very important to write the story of the place and the history. And what is this room for? Who lived here? Was he a sculptor? Was he a butcher? These are easy things you can render in the world. You put a rotting piece of meat with a knife in it, forgotten because this person hasn't been in the house, and a trail of blood leading to a broken window. And that's it. Step away from it. There's nobody to tell you what happened to that person. And you will go through that space, looting with lamp and moving on. But if you stop for a second, you're going to notice things that you're not, oh, there is detail here. And if rooms like this are everywhere, then it's easy for you to internalize the journey because you are passing through lived-in areas. So this is my biggest takeaway working on this project.
So the game is obviously, it's gone through a different couple of studios, and then you guys set up this studio, and then obviously to work on this game, you guys started from scratch again, right?
Correct.
Is there anything that you took from the initial builds that were created for the last version of it, or is this completely fresh?
100% is fresh. Well, we initially took their builds to create very, very, very small prototypes to show to people that we can do it, because our project hanged on the same thread, the same review. So we took it initially to prototype, but obviously this is no longer the case. We have rebuilt everything in Unreal Engine 5, start from zero, animation, sound, VFX, that we had nothing. And now in 3.5 years, this is it's at your fingertips.